Welcome back. In this video we're going to look at Skaven Plague monks. So here's the units all going to look like done, and with the uh, plague furnace that I did a while back. You can check out the video for that. I'll link it below. And so I did 35 plague monks and put them on a movement tray there. So that's now 10 units, 10 figures wide and 5 deep. So there's what it looked like to start out without the plague furnace there. And you can see the plague furnace is 3 by 5 for the 20mm square bases. And I just spray painted these guys just a regular green, nothing special there. Because the first thing I did was I went over the green with this jungle moss and covered up everything. So just really quick base coat just to get a nice even color. And when you have a whole lot of Skaven, that piles up pretty quick. So there's all the Skaven with the single jungle moss. Then I went on over everything with the Teleran flesh. So all the fleshy bits, anything that's going to be brown basically, skin or fur, got that Teleran flesh base. There you can see up close. So I didn't worry about any of the knives or belts or anything. That's going to get a Kelthan brown base, but Teleran flesh on everything else. And there's the Kelthan brown. So I'm figuring I'm going to make these all rusty, so they're going to get a brown base, and the belts and stuff like that just be browns. And I went over all of these bandage type things quickly with the brown. Figuring I'm going to do those whitish, so once I wash this I'll just do a strip of white over it. And anything on the standard there, he got the brown as well. Okay, now next thing I did was I gave the whole model an Ogren flesh wash, and so that worked on the greens as well as the Teleran flesh and the Kelthan brown. So you can see up close kind of what it looked like. Gave a bit of depth. Mostly was for the flesh, but it also helped everything else. Okay, now all their knives, their hand weapons, a bit of a stippling on the rust brown, so just to give it a rusty kind of overcoat. And I'm going to be highlighting this with silvers, so this is just to give it a bit of variation of color underneath. And there you can see just kind of random. It blends in a little bit with the other browns, which is good, so you get multi-toned rust. And again, a big pile of guys piling up. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm going back over this jungle moss. I wasn't super careful with all of the other colors, so I had to touch up around the edges of things, and just wanted to get up some of the inks the way they laid. I wanted to cover up most of the areas. So now I'm putting in the middle highlight here, so that's Highland moss, and basically I'm leaving out these deep shadows and covering up everything else. So kind of staying away from the edges for deep parts, but painting solid just about everything else. And there's maybe a bit better look. So you can see all the areas I'm just basically avoiding the areas that would have been picked up by the ink, as well as a little bit more. Sorry, not ink, wash. And giving it a nice base color there. Okay, it's hard to see this in this light, but basically with the pale lichen, I'm going around and just painting on the edges and highlights. So around sort of the edge of their cloak there, and then picking up any of the highest areas, so around the edge of their tunics. And it's just so the third highlight just on the edges of everything. Okay, now I'm going with a sort of a dry brush / stipple along the edges of all of their weapons. So doing this real quick, and you can see kind of what effect that ends up with. Some of them look better than others depending on how much paint was on the brush, but just going for the overall look of this unit. Not too worried about specific single guys looking the best. Okay, so wrapping up now, I kind of did these areas fast, so I used this rosy skin triad for all of their flesh, same as all the other Skaven I've done in my armies, and as well Deneb stone. It's not pictured here, but I painted over all of these bandages, and you'll see that in the next. So depending on how much detail I want on these guys, it's kind of how much time I spent on the rosy skin, which wasn't a lot on these guys, to be honest. So there we are, back to that same picture, and I used those same colors on the plague monks on the plague furnace, so that way they would all match. And then as well, I did the bases here Now this one I had done with coffee grounds. These ones out here I tried something a little bit different with a ballast, sort of, so it's a crushed rock kind of thing. I ended up having to paint it to match because it didn't match after all, but you can see that it's a coarser material. It ended up looking okay, but for a little while there it looked kind of crummy. So yeah, these guys are really fast to paint up, at least the way I did it. As you can see, there's not a lot of colors to them. They're going to look good on the tabletop, but they're not much higher than tabletop level. So any of these, so the bells here, they got a little bit of the dry brushing as well. I did a little bit of detail here, not a lot. And same with this, just enough to get by, not a lot more. And so 35 guys is a bigger unit. I find that anything above 20 can get pretty tedious. So this was up there in terms of the size of a unit to do it once. Now the other thing, just remembered, underneath here I used the Gale Force 9 magnetic rubber. I laid that inside the movement tray, and then I glued magnets inside each one of these guys' bases. So I used I think it's the 1/8 inch magnet from Mini Wargaming. Just glued them all on there, so those guys are going to stick down in that movement tray. They're not going to fall out accidentally. And I can't really shake it around, they're not that strong, but it's my first time using the Gale Force 9 rubber, and I like it. It's a pretty good solution and not too expensive. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty big centerpiece unit in an army. So you have the horde formation because you're 10 wide with that plague furnace. And here we go, a little bit closer. And you got five ranks there, and 2 hand weapons. These guys are going to be pretty deadly. So yeah, just a little bit of detail, just kind of try to do some Skaven symbols and then pretend writing. Like I said, just enough to try to get by. There's a bit brighter. See some of the other guys. And I used that denim stone on some of their toenails and teeth as well. Bit of an overhead look. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed this quick show on how I did 35 Plague Monks. Like I said, it didn't